Right.
No, it was not in a good way. I kept waking up like every hour or so thinking that I was dead.
Waking up, assume she was dead. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Amigas Podcast, the podcast where we ask about modern movies. Do I give a shit? Is this a movie I care about? Is this a movie I should care about? And is this a movie you should care about? Today, we're going to talk about Hustlers, a movie that we gave a huge shit about, and we think you should definitely give a shit about. And much like Zola, which we talked about last time, this movie is based on a true story. It's based on some things that actually happened and based on some things that pretty much went viral. This wasn't something that people became aware of because of social media like it was with Zola, where it went viral on Twitter. This is a movie that came out and was talked about in New York, based on an article in New York Magazine that came out in the mid-2010s, based on some things that happened in the mid-2010s. And so the synopsis of this movie is basically we have a stripper whose strip name is Destiny, and she's a stripper in Manhattan that's just doing it for the money. You know, she gets into it. She doesn't do too well at her first strip club, so she moves up to another strip club. She doesn't do too well because everything she makes ends up going to, she doesn't make very much money to start with, and then everything she does make ends up going to in kickbacks to the other people in the strip club that run the game.
Like the bartender,
like
the owner, the bouncer.
The bouncer, people like that, So she's trying to figure out how to be more successful in stripping in her relative field. And much like Tony Robbins advises, she takes the advice of study successful people and then do what they did. So she meets Ramona. She sees Ramona, first of all, who is a stripper played by Jennifer Lopez, who does a great job in this movie. Mm-hmm. And, Jennifer Lopez is the stripper in there, getting all the money, doing all the good stuff, really coming up in it. So,
pretty much hustling the hustlers.
Hustling the hustlers, because, pretty much your main clientele at a strip club is your Wall Street boys. It's your guys that make
like hundreds and thousands of dollars and don't give a damn on how they spend it.
Hundreds and thousands of dollars and don't care how they spend it. They just want to have fun. They want to enjoy that money they're making so they can go back to making money the next day. So, she doesn't do too well at first, but she meets Ramona, and Ramona, is outside one night when she goes up on the roof to smoke a cigarette, and she says, "Come over here, girl. By the way, where is your furs? Why aren't you wearing these nice furs like I'm wearing? Why are you out here in your strip outfit," which is basically no outfit, and she's cold, and she goes, "I'm not really getting it like that. I'm not really doing that well yet, so I'm just out here in the cold in my stripper outfit." And she goes, "Well, hop into my furs and let's talk for a minute." So she asks her how she's doing. She asks her what's going on, and she basically says, "I'm doing okay, but I'm not doing that great." And Ramona's like, "Girl, what do you mean you're not doing that great? You're pretty, you're a stripper, you're Asian, you're pretty much a triple threat. Like, how are you not doing good here? You just need some advice. You just need some pointers. You just need some lessons." So she gets some stripping lessons from Ramona. She introduces her to the clique, and she teaches her the way to make money is basically by breaking down the three types of guys that really have the money. They're all Wall Street guys. They're all guys that get paid a lot of money. And she breaks it down to her that the way to get paid is you got to understand the different types of Wall Street guys. There is the guy at the bottom who is basically making a little bit of money. He's the gopher. He's not really doing anything too dirty to make his money. He's just down there at the bottom, just doing his, calling people.
He hasn't even started yet.
He's just trying to get paid a little bit. He's just doing what he does, at the lower level. But one of the things she does point about him is that, you can get whatever he does have. You can get that. If you can get him to start spending money, you can take him for every damn thing that he has. So, Destiny takes her advice. She starts making bank. She starts doing a really good job. She, starts making some improvements in her life. She buys a new car. She goes back to school. And
she pays her grandmother's debt.
She pays all her grandmother's debt off, and it really does a good job in this movie of humanizing, like, these individuals involved. Like, it really shows, hey, these are real people. Like,
this is why sex work should be legal.
This is why sex work should be legal, y'all, but we won't try to get too far off on that. So, anyway, she gets a boyfriend, and they end up having a kid, and, that inspires Destiny to quit stripping for about 2.5 years. She ends up breaking up with her boyfriend, and she really can't get a job. She can't even get a job in retail. You know,
The straight jobs, what
The
we call the
straight job, yeah.
paperwork jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
She can't do it.
she tries getting a job just like literally selling perfume, and the lady that's like, at the perfume counter at Macy's or someplace like that is like, okay, so what kind of experience do you have? What kind of education do you have? And then she's like, oh, wait a minute. She's that typical uppity bitch that's like,
With a French accent.
yeah, with a French accent, just trying way too hard to sell perfume, because it's probably a fake French accent, let's be honest. But she is like, oh, okay, I see you have your GED. Good for you. Oh my God, that's nice, So basically, Destiny ends up going back to the club.
Now, don't forget, she's been out of the loop since about 2008.
Yeah, since about 2008, she's been out of the loop. This is we're cutting. This is 2011 that she's cutting back to her going back to the club, and she's just trying to see how the hustle is going. I mean, she was doing good. She was doing really good in the club in 2008, or up till 2008. When the financial crisis hit, and it wasn't because of the financial crisis that she quit.
It was because of having a baby.
It was because of having a baby. She met some guy that she thought was like so good looking, and
even throughout the movie, up until the point where she kicks him out.
Yeah,
they were on and off again.
They were on again, off again. Just back and forth.
I think he didn't agree with her working as a stripper to get the money.
Which is definitely a theme that they cover in this movie. That if anybody that's listening to this has ever thought about dating a stripper, we're not saying you shouldn't do that, but you should definitely understand what it is your significant other does for a living. And if you're any kind of a jealous type, that's not the type of girlfriend you should have. Do her and you a favor and get some other type of girlfriend. You really should. So, she goes back to the club, and because of the 2008 financial crisis, she finds out that the game has now changed a lot. The tips have dried up a whole bunch. They're not being spread around as much. And, basically the girls, instead of just making their good money stripping and just having money paper flung at them because they're up there showing their bodies, they have now resorted to doing sex work in the VIP room where the cameras have been removed.
And they have what essentially is the den mother for these girls now working
the older lady that was stripping, right?
Yeah, the older lady that was stripping.
Who used to be stripping. Now she's tending bar.
Now she's tending bar. She used to tend to the girls in the back. Now she's up at tending the bar and everything, and
just lets her know how shit's going. She lets her know, like, hey man, the tips have dried up. There's no cameras in the champagne room anymore, and pretty much you got girls in there. How do we put this nicely? Selling fellatio, to put it properly. Selling oral sex for $300 a pop. And our homegirl Destiny in this film, she's not about that. That's not what she's trying to do, but she's not really trying to do any of this. She's just trying to get paid, right? So, she ends up in the champagne room with a guy who's sitting there, and he's tapping out coke on his hand.
Okay, I'm going to have to pause it here.
Yeah, pause it. Throw it out to me. Kick it to me one time.
You also need to be reminded that during this movie also, she's talking to a reporter.
Oh, yeah. So this whole movie is told... it basically shows how the story came to be a movie, because you have our main character is talking to a reporter played by Julia Stiles, who is playing the reporter for New York Magazine that broke this whole story, and she's just kind of telling her how it all went down and what the incentives and the motives and the thoughts behind it all were. And so it cuts in and out of that. It cuts in and out of her talking to this reporter and telling her how things went.
And pretty much her life story, why she did what she did.
Her grandma being in debt and all that kind of stuff. So,
she's talking to the den mother.
She's talking to the den mother. She finds out what's going on, and she ends up in the champagne room with a guy who's sitting there tapping out coke on his hand, and, basically like begging. He knows what time it is. He knows how bad things have gotten messed up financially. He's balling on a budget there at the strip club, and he's asking her like, hey, won't you just go a little further? I didn't just pay for a show that I can see. I want to interact with this. I want to interact. Yeah, I want some touches. Won't you just touch it? And she's like, no, I'm not really into that. I don't really want to do that. And he pulls out some money, and he's like, okay, I'll give you $100 just to do such and such. We're not going to get too explicit, but just to do such and such, just to reach in and do a little bit. Here's $100, and he throws down one bill, and she's like, no, I'm still not feeling it. I don't want to do that, dude. And so he like pulls out another one. He's like, okay, how about 200? Why don't you get in there for 200? And he's like, And she's like, no, I don't really, just nah, bro, just nah. And so, then he pulls out one more and throws it down, and she's like, okay, it's $300. That's what the den mom told me that, the money, what the rate was going for this. I really need this money. I can't even get a job in retail. Let's just go for it. And thankfully, the scene is just implied in this, because it's not something
It
fun.
cuts back to the reporter.
It cuts back to the reporter. And one of the things that she tells her is, basically after I finished doing the job that he was trying to pay for, I looked down at the money and I realized he didn't drop 300s, he dropped 320s. So she pretty much gets scammed out of, $240 that she was going to use for her.
Because don't forget,
life.
she still has this baby at home that she needs to provide for.
Yeah, she does. She's got real reasons for needing this money. This is not something she's doing to be cool or because she's hypersexual by any means at all. She's probably quite the opposite. She's just trying to get paid. So immediately after this experience where she, gets scammed out of $240 for a piece of sex work, which she really didn't want to perform, that she was just doing for the money. But
her homegirl shows up, right?
Her homegirl shows up. Her homegirl Ramona that gave her those stripping lessons and gave her those lap dancing lessons and broke down to her how to tell the clientele and tell who's doing what and who to get the money from. She shows back up. She's in there and she runs up to her and she gives her a hug that just throws her off. She's like, oh my God, girl. One of the really great pieces of acting in this is when Jennifer Lopez gets this hug. She's like, oh my God, she could just tell. I think she could just tell in the scene that she had not been doing well. Things had not been going well at all. Not at all. So basically, Ramona ends up hooking up with some of her other girls that used to be in her clique, that used to be in the strip scene. And, because it's 2011, if y'all remember, it took a long time for the financial crisis to get better. And by 2011, it was still pretty deep in it, So she runs into some other strippers that she knew back in the day, and things are not going well for them. And so they come up with this idea, which is basically the hustle, basically the act behind which the premise of this movie is based on. And the hustle is pretty much that they find guys, unsuspecting rich guys. They go out to bars, the 4 of them or 5 of them or however many.
I think it was 3 at the beginning.
3 at the beginning, okay. So they go out and it's 3 girls. And they go find some unsuspecting rich guy, and they do a good job of showing how they found a rich guy. The key is in the shoes.
Ring.
Ring
And shoes.
Ring and shoes, because the ring, because if he's married, he can support a family. He's got money to do that.
Not only that, but he will not talk.
He will not talk. No, definitely not.
Because that would ruin his family.
And that's how you protect the hustle at the end game. So they, much like the, I forget the guy's name that wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but you begin with the end in mind. So one of the things that made this a highly successful hustle was they began with the end in mind. They thought about, what kind of mark, what kind of victim, what kind of customer, I guess, that they would pick,
Oh yeah, and they would take them to the club that they already gonna get a percentage from, and the other people are involved already in.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They already have it set up.
So that basically they find a guy at a bar, they get together, and he's got all these hot girls around him, and they're like, oh my God, we should keep partying, after they've already, got him to feed him a couple of shots and get in a good mood. They're like, okay, so let's go out to a strip club, let's keep this party going. And of course you've got this poor unsuspecting bastard that thinks he's going to get lucky, so he goes to the strip club with these hot girls, and imagine that, wouldn't you? Like there's nothing, you already got a girl that you think is cool, and then she wants to go see some more naked girls. That's got to be something crazy, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, coming from a girl's perspective too, if you're a guy, this is an easy target.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
can get them as drunk or as high as you want, because in some states now weed is legal.
Right.
So
although it wasn't at this time.
It wasn't at this time, but still, it's a club. It is implied that there's still illegal substance going on. So,
and just speaking of weed, I think that one of the not to plug weed, of which not to give away too much about myself, but Danny and I are huge fans. I don't even consider weed a drug, because let's face it, nobody's ever overdosed and died on it, but that's not the point of our podcast.
The only thing dangerous is a bag of Doritos.
A bag of Doritos. If you're a Dorito, marijuana is a very dangerous drug. It can definitely result in some slaughter and some consumption. You might just get torn up entirely. But again, that's not the point of us our
No,
podcast
no.
here. But my point is that weed would have not been a very good thing in this.
Oh,
like,
no. Oh,
it's
no.
just like that statement where people give, a drunk. Well, what's the difference between a drunk driver and a driver on marijuana? A drunk driver is going to be going like 90 in a 35 and swear that the speed limit was 40, whereas a stone driver, a driver on marijuana, is going to be going like 50 and a 70 and swear that he's going 100, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And not only that, but I used to, in high school, have a teacher that worked on Wall Street before he became a teacher. So
and what was that like? Like, what was it like to have? Because teachers notoriously get shit pay. So, what was it like to have a guy that used to make hella money? What do you think he was a crooked guy, and that's why he had to go into teaching to make it up to everyone, to himself?
I think he told us that he got out of it because with the Wall Street, you have to be on a phone 24/7. You do not get a break. So as soon as you clock out,
it was like the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, you also go ahead and take out other clients to bars, hotel, stuff like that.
You're always working even when you're not working.
Exactly, and he couldn't handle it anymore. He wanted to get out of it, so he went into
He wanted to go home and smoke weed. He wanted to talk about Henry VIII and then go home and roll a blunt.
He was my math teacher.
Your math teacher. So, and for which grade was he your math teacher for?
He was my algebra and my Algebra 2 teacher.
Okay, so basically he was the teacher that first taught you how to put letters into those number equations, right?
Oh yeah, and he let me sleep during class too.
Were you that good? Like, were you that good or were you that bad, Danny?
I was that good. He literally bitched out another student because he fell asleep and they wanted to call me out.
What kind of grade point average by letter do you think that guy he called out was having at that point?
Oh, he was failing.
So he
even said he was failing.
So you got a guy who's getting an F there, and he's trying to doze in class, and your math teacher was like, "Bro, get the fuck up! What are you doing? You don't want to be like, get up, get the fuck up! You don't want to work at McDonald's your whole life." So, but what kind of? No offense to anyone that's a lifer at McDonald's.
Yeah,
like, you're a badass if you can put up with that
good.
shit. We love you and thank you, and please don't spit on my food. I worked at Burger King in my 30s, so no disrespect to anybody that's ever worked at McDonald's.
Even though I haven't worked food customer service.
Food service.
Yeah, food service. I took ServSafe, and I took.
What did you have to take ServSafe for?
In high school, we had a culinary arts program that I went to, so
okay.
I know the hassle.
So that's that dream that you'll be getting back into,
yeah.
once we finish our grindy 9 to 5 with podcasting.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll eventually transition into talking about food, huh?
Hey, I would love to talk about food.
If you can make money just talking about food on a podcast, you're basically the Gordon Ramsay of podcasters, because I'm telling you, when I watch MasterChef, it just piques my imagination so much just sitting there thinking about it that I keep watching it, even when I'm not hungry.
My late husband, he said the worst channel to watch in the hospital is the Food Network.
Oh my God, it's got to be the Food Network, dude, because I hope nobody ever listening to this has ever had the misfortune of being in the hospital. If you are in the hospital listening to this, I hope you get out soon. My God, God bless you, bless your heart.
Yes.
Because hospital food is notoriously bad. Most people don't know that, but hospital food is not only notoriously bad, it's intentionally bad because they want people to not like it, so they'll get the fuck out of there.
Oh, it's not only that, it's also they claim that all this food is supposed to be healthy for you, but yet
it is not.
Not only that,
neither is being in the hospital.
But the thing is that you have people that have heart disease that have low sodium, but yet when they try to order, something that has low sodium in it or supposedly has
they just tell you use less salt, motherfucker.
No, you can't order it. They won't let you order it.
So you just have to eat that high. Is it high sodium food that comes in the hospital? Is that what?
Oh yeah, it's high. It's all high sodium. Most of it is frozen. So they have high sodium. They don't use local produce. They don't use anything.
Oh, hell no. They don't use anything that fresh. Holy shit. They don't give a fuck.
And not only that, but they have a standard menu. They don't have particular menus for, let's say, a diabetic, someone that's having a heart transplant.
I don't even think they hire people that give a fuck about food, dude.
Oh, no, they don't. They don't.
I mean, and why would they? Again, they're not trying to get people to stay in the hospital any longer. But,
no, but...
And again, this is not a defense of a hospital. Fuck hospitals and fuck our healthcare system.
especially here in North Carolina.
Especially here in North Carolina. So back to our movie that we're talking about. They go basically in on the hustle. You've got Ramona and Destiny. We're going by their stripper names, not their real names. But you've got Ramona and Destiny, and they're trying to figure out how to make good money at what they're doing, because there is no more good money in what they're doing. So they just said they come up with the hustle, which is let's go out and find these guys and trick them into going to a strip club and dropping as much money as they can on drinks or whatever. And even when they were stripping, they tried to get them to spend as much, to get them as drunk as they could, to just barely sober enough still, or just barely functional enough still to still be able to sign the bill for their credit card when it comes. And once they get into this sub hustle, even that goes out the window. Like, I think
they got good money for a while, but then people started catching on. And there's people that were smart to begin with, and they just and that's the, hey, look, if you want to know how humility will save you, watch this movie and pay attention to the guy that runs away from this, because that's a guy who knows himself and knows his own limits and was able to keep his fucking money and avoid getting scammed, because he knew this was bullshit. He knew there's no way that these hot girls want some dude like me, especially all of them at once. Something is definitely suspicious. Like, it just sends off red flags.
It just sent off red flags, and he was like, fuck this, I'm getting out of here. So so it doesn't, alcohol is basically legal because it's everyone's favorite drug, or most favorite drug, or it's the lowest common denominator of what people agree should be a legal drug, but, or maybe it's just the hardest drug to control. I don't know. Tune into my other podcast to find out more about that. Shout out to TyCad. But, alcohol only takes you so far, especially when you're trying to scam people like these girls are doing in this movie. And so Ramona ends up coming up with another plan, right? And how does that work, Danny? What's her other plan? Like, let me kick it to you. What's her other plan?
The other plan is to
spike the drinks, right?
Yeah,
spike the drinks.
And
we're not talking about putting a little Everclear in the watermelon at your Southern Baptist cookout. We're talking about putting some powders and some crystals and some hardcore shiznit into your alcoholic drink.
What were the drugs that they were using?
Ketamine and MDMA. They put ketamine and MDMA.
How does that work?
It basically, the explanation in the movie is, the MDMA makes them feel good, and the ketamine makes them unable to remember anything.
Have you ever tried either one of those, or at the same time, like they do in this movie?
I'm going to officially, for legal reasons, plead the fifth and say all drugs are bad. I've never done anything illegal in my life, and neither should anyone listening to this podcast. But for entertainment purposes only, I will tell you, hell yeah, motherfucker, I've done that shit. I haven't actually done them together before, though. I have done MDMA and I have done ketamine. And most of the people I know that have done them, like a lot of ravers, use both of these drugs, and they'll go out to a rave, they'll go out to a club, and they'll take the MDMA when they're first getting there and drinking a little bit of alcohol. Again, side note, and please tune into TyCad's episode about MDMA if you'd like to know about that. But a lot of people will drink MDMA, they'll drink alcohol, and they'll take the MDMA, and the best way to do that is so that your MDMA is going to hit at the same time that the alcohol is wearing off, so that you get the purest experience and it doesn't dull it down. And then, they'll party, they'll dance, they'll do the whole thing, and then as the MDMA is wearing down and you're having the come down, which is not a horrible crash, but it's and I don't even know that I would completely call it a crash, but it's a come down, it's a decline of effects of this good time that you're having. They'll hit that ketamine, which is instead of being just a stimulant and a hallucinogen, a minor hallucinogen, which is what MDMA is, they'll hit that ketamine, which is a dissociative. So it kind of turns, it just kind of makes you forget that you're coming down on it, and it puts you in another place. And ketamine, by the way, is a really great antidepressant. It's actually being used clinically right now for breakthrough treatment for depression. And so, when a lot of people famously get depressed after the MDMA wears off because they've used a lot of serotonin, using ketamine afterwards, totally takes that away. So, I have never, to answer your question, Danny, I've never done enough ketamine to have memory loss. I can tell you about every time I've done ketamine. No one's ever come to me and told me, oh, bro, you did such and such while you were on K, bro. No, I can tell you about all the times I've done ketamine, which is a little bit limited. I can count it on one hand. But, I can remember. I can tell you what I did. I can tell you what that was like because, those of you that know me know I'm a little bit scared of hallucinogens, which not that ketamine's a hallucinogen, it's more of a dissociative, but at the same time, just like I never wanted to do too much LSD and have a bad trip, I never wanted to end up in what's called a K-hole, which is where you are basically just stuck and out of your body and like, oh my God, what's going on? And that is no good place. That is definitely not where you want somebody to be if you're trying to scam somebody into giving up their credit card so you can go spend all their money.
Now, you talked about a study with K, but you also need to inform our listeners that they're also doing a study on the MDMA as well, with PTSD and all that as well.
They are actually. There is MDMA has recently, as recently as 2020, been given breakthrough therapy status by the FDA. Basically been given approval to get the same kind of studies and experiments done with it that's currently being done with ketamine. Currently, you can go to places, I don't know exactly which cities it's being done in, but I know Louisville, Kentucky is one of them where you can go if you're experiencing severe, unrelenting depression or whatever. You go and they'll hook you up to an IV and they'll give you a certain amount of ketamine, and it's basically, it's a treatment for depression. It helps people, especially people that have struggled with addiction. The guy I know who went to Louisville and did that is a long-time heroin addict that has definitely struggled with depression. He openly talks about on Facebook wanting to kill himself and how great that would be if he was dead and stuff like that. So basically what they're trying to do by getting breakthrough therapy status with MDMA, from the FDA, is even those dumb assholes have decided that, hey, this is something that could really help people that have depression, and not just depression, but specifically with MDMA, with people that are experiencing PTSD. So, I don't know what they're going to charge for it when it comes out. I imagine it'll be outrageously expensive.
Well, yeah, because they're turning a illegal substance to a legal substance.
Which is, they may as fucking well, because they're the ones that fucking made it illegal to start with. MDMA was legal up until the fucking 80s, I think. You could buy it over a damn phone line.
Yeah. Just like cocaine was in most cough syrups.
Do you know why? Actually, it was heroin that was in cough syrups.
Heroin?
Yes, it was heroin, because heroin has a respiratory depressant effect. Basically, you've heard of lean, most of our listeners. If you're listening to this and you've stuck with it this long, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you've listened to, Future or NBA Youngboy or something like that, and you know what lean is. Basically, before it was codeine in cough syrup, it was heroin in cough syrup. Not only heroin, but chloroform and cannabis. They would put that in cough syrup, too. You could go buy that. You could buy some lit shit before 1914, dude.
Okay, when is time travel going to be invented so I can experience this?
Hopefully tomorrow, so I can just hop back to Walgreens in 1903, load up on shit, and then jump back to 2022 and have a great time. Not to mention there's a few other things I do with time travel, but I'm not going to give too much away about my personal life because, like I said, I've never done anything illegal in my life. Ever, not once. And drugs are bad. You should never do them. Everything I've said good about drugs is just for entertainment.
Exactly. So, to get back to the story. So, they decide to spike the drinks, right?
They decide to spike the drinks, and they decide they're going to do it with something like a 70-30 ratio or something like that.
I think it was 60-40.
60-40, okay. So they're going to give them 60% MDMA and 40% ketamine, which again, like I said, most people that are doing drugs to have a good time, which is what these poor bastards thought they were doing. Actually, they didn't think shit. They didn't know they were doing drugs. If you're doing drugs just to have a good time and you're doing ketamine and MDMA, you're going to wait till the MDMA is wearing off to hit the K, for the reasons we talked about earlier. But for the purpose of what our protagonists in this movie are doing, they're trying to give it to them at the same damn time, like Future said. And, they want that MDMA to make them feel really good with that serotonin release and all that shit going on. And the ketamine to make them not remember too much because they don't want them to know what the fuck they were doing.
Just a quick question for this. Go
right ahead.
Wouldn't the date rape drug be more sufficient in this?
So that's an interesting question you asked there. Again, not that I've ever done anything illegal or know anything about illegal substances, but there are actually a couple of different drugs that have been considered the date rape drug. You guys have probably heard of a drug called roofies. which is slang for Rohypnol. Rohypnol is actually a benzodiazepine. It's in the same class of drugs as Xanax, Klonopin, Valium, Tranxene, things like that. And it's basically just a stronger version of it. There's only in the United States is Rohypnol even illegal, and the reason for that is because it gains status as the date rape drug. Well, you can still go buy it pretty much over the counter in Mexico, and it's available by prescription for, I don't know, I think sleep and shit like that in other countries. It's only banned here. It's basically, my point is, there's nothing that one Rohypnol does to people that you couldn't just as easily do to people with putting 4 Xanax in their drink. The other drug that is considered the date rape drug is GHB. I've never done GHB, so I don't know exactly what that's like, but GHB, if I'm not mistaken, is somewhere between like a hypnotic and a dissociative, and it's usually made in a liquid form, which makes it more easily available to put into people's drinks and to do shit like that.
This does answer my question. They could have done this several different ways other than...
Oh, they most definitely could have done this several different ways.
What they actually did.
That's right, and I think the reason that they made this, they didn't talk about their motives for creating this cocktail other than what they just discussed, that the MDMA would make them feel good, and that the ketamine would make them forget shit.
Get them more money, pretty much.
Right, and not only that, but I think it helped them cover their tracks, because, if you had a victim later on that went to the police and they said...
Which happens in this story, by the way.
Which happens in this story, and the police wanted evidence, and so, imagine the police tried to drug test people, and they wanted to see what was going on with those people. If they found, a really high concentration of benzodiazepines, for example, they might say, oh, shit, yeah, you were giving roofies, bro. You've definitely been, date rape drug, bruh. But ketamine is a little bit harder to test for. I don't think it's very commonly tested for. I think you would actually have to get a very specific test to test for that. I don't think it's anything that comes in a standard 5-stake panel that would be hard to test for, and it wouldn't be very surprising to find that someone had MDMA in their system. I mean, imagine you're a cop and you have someone coming to you saying, oh my god, bro, I got messed up at a strip club with a bunch of strippers, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of money missing, and there's something really crazy happened to me, bro. And he goes, okay, well, let's test you and let's see what you might have in your system, and all they find is fucking MDMA. That cop's gonna be like, well, no shit, you did X at a strip club, fucking get out of here, stop wasting my time. This is something that half of the people that went to a fucking strip club
but if they find the roofie, then it becomes questionable.
If they found the roofie, that would be more questionable.
Okay, so that's why they use K instead of any roofies or anything like that.
Not exactly, and not only that, but if they had given them roofies or stuff like that, I mean, you're gonna pass out, and then someone's gonna rape you or whatever, and you're gonna wake up in the place where it happened, and you're not gonna remember anything because you were fucking unconscious, you were asleep. Whereas if you give somebody MDMA, which is kind of a stimulant, and you got a little bit of ketamine in there, some K, which is a dissociative, you're going to be active enough to be moving around and doing shit, and people are going to see you and whatever, and the people seeing you are not going to know that you're all that fucked up, or they're not going to be able to have,
Or they assume you had too much to drink in
Or they assume you had too much to drink in that case, exactly. But the point is, you're going to be seen moving around, you're going to be cognizant enough to, pull out your card and help people or whatever, so, and then it's going to be on something they can't really test for or are not commonly going to test for. So, it's not that suspicious. You just say, so if you end up telling a detective or a club owner or whatever, hey, I came to this club and I spent all this money, and, you can look on the cameras and see me moving around and shit, all they're going to see is a guy that looks like he's drunk and a little bit out of it. And then they're not going to find anything suspicious in his system except MDMA. So it really is a pretty good cocktail. Again, I haven't done them together, so I don't know exactly what that would be like. But it does seem to me like that would be a pretty good combination, to be honest with you. One of the things I do remember about one of the times I did a particularly big hit.
Again, this is entertainment purposes only.
Entertainment purposes only. But, one of the times that I took a particularly big hit of ketamine, and this was ketamine by itself. I wasn't doing MDMA at not that particular time. But as I remember seeing trails, we were sitting on the couch at a buddy of mine's house, and he had one of those little, I don't know, they call it a bullet. It's not a sex toy device, but it's a little thing that you put powders in, and you basically flip this switch one way and then the other, and it scoops up a little bit of of product or whatever you put into the bullet, like a Coke nail, and then you put it up to your nose and you take a huge sniff of it and it hits you with it. Again, the times I had ever done ketamine before, the first time I ever did it, I was at a person who acquired the ketamine's house. He told them how much to weigh out on the scale and cut up into a dose. And what he didn't realize was that he had fucked around and put a decimal point in the wrong place. And so the people that my friends that I was with, they ended up doing 10 times the amount that they wanted to, because that's literally what happens when you put a fucking, I'm not that good at math, but y'all that are know that when you put a decimal point in the wrong place, you increase the amount by 10 times. So yeah,
that was probably a really fun time for them.
It was not a fun time for them at all, dude. It was not even a little bit fun. Like, what they ended up...
I think my sarcastic font wasn't working on that one.
Oh, no, homegirl. Look, okay. So, and this is the best part of it. The guy busts out the ketamine. He's got a big bag of it, and they're looking at it, and they had never touched this stuff before, the people I was with. And, me being me, I was like, all right, cut me out a bump. Just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. I probably took the equivalent of 20 grains from a salt shaker, and I hit that stuff, and I was like, whoa, I can feel this. I can definitely feel this. That was plenty for me. You remember, kids, if not that anyone should ever do drugs, but if you do drugs
are bad.
You can always do more. You can never do less. You can't take that shit out of your nose. You can't pull it out of your veins. You can't uninhale it from your lungs. You can't take it out of your stomach. Fucking, you can always do more. You can never do less. So when a big bag of crystals came around of some stuff that I knew allegedly what was, but had never tried before, did a little bitty bump, and I was like, whoa, I'm good. I can feel this. I'm straight. I'm good. They didn't touch it. They didn't sample it. They didn't do that ultra smart thing that you should always do with any substance you get, which is do a little tiny bit first. Do a little tiny bit first before you even do a whole dose, especially if it's anything you bought illegally.
All right. So, for example, this comes from personal experience. You know that Delta 8 is now legal.
Yep. Try it out, kids. If that's your local if it's legal, it must be good for you. Go try it.
It's at your local vape store.
The government knows best. Trust your government.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, so my mom, she also takes it. She has rheumatoid arthritis. I have lupus and several other disorders. So she decides to go get gummies, edibles, whatever you want to call them.
Delta 8 gummies.
Yeah, Delta 8 gummies.
D8 gums.
Well, they're...
Date gums.
Well, they're 50 grams.
Some shit.
So
50 grams? You mean 50 milligrams, right?
Yeah, 50 milligrams.
50 milligrams, yeah.
Yeah, 50 milligrams. So it's larger than the 25 that I normally take. So I'm like, okay, I can handle this. Well, she doesn't tell me it's 50 first off. So
how much did you think it was?
25.
25. So you thought it was half the amount that you were getting?
Oh yeah. I thought it was half the amount.
At least it wasn't 10 times like my friends that ended up in a K-hole.
Well, I assumed I stopped breathing. Let's just say I took it in, and I assumed I stopped breathing in the middle of the night.
Did you actually stop breathing, or were you just freaking out?
I was just freaking out because it was a larger amount than what I was used to at the time. So I literally started freaking out. I was like trapped in my own head type of thing. And
in a good way or a bad way? You said trapped, so I'm going to assume that's not in a good way, right?
No, it was not in a good way. I kept waking up like every hour or so thinking that I was dead.
Waking up, but thought she was dead.
Exactly. It sounds weird now, and I laugh about
what happened in the moment.
In the moment. So I completely understand taking a little bit and then going up from there.
Bro, they should have asked me rather than the guy that they were getting it from. And again, this was a really smart guy, but it was all theoretical knowledge. They didn't ask the real G that me, who, tested the shit and saw what it was like. I could have told him that was too much, and maybe it was the K, but I didn't bother advising him. I just assumed these two people, one of which was my girlfriend at the time, by the way.
Oh Lord.
Oh yeah. And she ended up taking this guy at his advice, and she thought she was really smart, and the dude that she was doing it with thought he was really smart, and the guy advising them was really smart, but again, human error happens, and sometimes you put a decimal point in the wrong place. And because nobody in that situation had any first-hand experience except for me, and because nobody asked the person that had first-hand experience, which was me, they chopped out these big fucking lines, these big-ass lines of this shit. You know, it was too much of a line. Just looking at it visually, it was too much of a line. If it was something else, you know, that you should never do, like a more common substance that definitely doesn't rhyme with bromine. But it was too much even for that. Like, I looked at it and was like, thinking to myself, y'all should not fucking do that much. But maybe there was a little morbid part of me that just wanted to sit back and watch the fireworks show. So they pick up a straw and they insufflate these giant fucking lines of ketamine, and they ended up on the floor in an existential crisis, talking about dumb shit, throwing up like a cat. And this dude was making cat noises while he was throwing up, like, you know, like that. And she was laying around like, oh my God, why did I do this? What's the point of drugs? Why do I do drugs? Why do I do drugs? Why do I do this? And, you know, and we were at their, you know, apartment with, you know, several other people who lived in, and one of the other dudes came home from his job as a nurse. That's what he did.
Oh, Lord.
And
Lord.
He was the dumb friend in our group, and, you know, like, not... Yeah, he was the dumb friend in our group, and, you know, just the goofy motherfucker that, you know, always kept things light. And, you know, my girlfriend at the time is sitting there on the floor going, James, why do I do drugs? What's the point of drugs? And he's like, I don't know, dude. Like, you did them. You should fucking know. Like, what the fuck? You know, suddenly James is a goddamn genius compared to this idiot that just sat there and did 10 times the amount of K that she should have done. So, you know, I had a perfectly nice time, and they ended up in a fucking K-hole. And
the existential crisis high.
Existential crisis high. That's exactly where they ended up.
I think that's what I experienced with that Delta 8. I swear.
That's amazing. I'm
I was so scared for myself that I actually slept out in the shed with my husband at the time.
Holy shit, dude.
Because I did not want to be alone, and my mom was already in bed.
Holy shit, dude. So yeah, edibles can sneak up on you is the point of that. So
and with an edible, it tends to stay in your system the next day. So you can
in there for a little while. So you definitely had some linger. Even when did you wake up high?
Oh yeah. It was nice, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm not doing this again
I'm not doing this shit again. Not in that amount. Holy fuck. So back to the movie that we're talking about, you know, which we got just a little off topic with. What genre is this movie? It's a drama, right? Like, it's not really a comedy, but it's a drama. It could have been funnier, like, in a lot of ways, but it wasn't.
They do have funny parts, but
it does have some funny parts.
Not hilarious parts like Zola. This is literally a drama.
Yeah, this is a straight up drama, and again, it's based on real people's lives and a real story that happened to people. So, you know, that's a big part about it. Here's the question we always ask in our movie reviews: do I care about these people? Did you care about these people, Danny?
Yes, I did.
I did too. I really did,
because it shows what.
It shows why people get into stripping.
Yeah,
I feel like even if you were a viewer that was really anti-sex work and anti-stripping and a really hardcore conservative, you probably wouldn't make it through the whole movie, because there's definitely a lot of, like, you know, nudity and stuff like that in this movie. But even if you were a conservative, just evaluating it from that point of view, you can definitely understand why this nice girl, you know, her strip name being Destiny, you can understand why it is she got into this, because she's got this sweet little Asian grandma that's helping her out. And times are hard, and she only had a GED. And can you imagine only having a GED if you were an Asian chick with all that kind of pressure? Holy shit.
Well, I certain views I consider myself conservative on.
Right.
And with this one, no, there's a reason why people get into certain things.
None of these people that got into this were slutty or super sex positive or just dying for attention from men. It was really quite the opposite. I feel like all of these girls that were involved in this kind of resented men and were just needing to use them to get their fucking money's worth.
Look, at one point, one of the girls was crying on the floor in the locker room. I mean...
because of a bad time with a man.
Yeah, so, I mean, it shows a human aspect.
It really does.
To this lifestyle.
It really does. And not in the disrespectful way. I don't know if you ever heard of the company called tshirthell.com, where it's called T-shirt Hell, where all the bad shirts go. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
Well, we won't get off on that, but they have a shirt that has a silhouette of a stripper on a pole, and underneath that silhouette it says, "I support single moms."
That is true.
And that's true in this movie too, right? Like,
yeah, because
when she goes back to stripping, she has a kid, right?
Yeah, she has a
kid.
And
Ramona has a kid too, yeah.
Yeah, and she's putting her through... We see her in a school uniform at one point, the Ramona's kid. So she's trying to get the best life for the kid. Most definitely.
So, to cover our main 2 points, I care about these people. I care about what's happening to them. And I think those things go hand in hand. Our number 1 and our number 2 questions that we usually ask: do I care about these people, and do I care about what's happening to them? Because they made me care about these people because I cared about what was happening to them. You have this sweet little girl with, you have this sweet Asian girl with her sweet old Asian grandma, and
that she's trying to help,
trying to look out for, and trying to give her money and stuff like that. So, I cared about this. I really did. So, number 3 is, did it capture my interest within the first 20 minutes? It definitely did for me. Okay, but it did for you too, even as a straight female, because me as a straight male, you got boobies and strippers and shit like that.
That's kind of what caught your interest.
Well, I mean, if any man's interest, that's what they're going. I mean, unless you're gay and don't like boobies or whatever. No offense to anybody, but I'm obviously the person they were trying to sell this on.
Yeah, but for me as a straight female, watching this movie, it shows the hustle and the hard work that these women go through as single parents if they have kids.
Yeah, most definitely.
Or if they're trying to support elderly, relatives and stuff like that.
And there's the perspective of, I mean, granted, anybody wants to support their grandparents, no matter who they are, but, this girl's grandma it didn't go into that, but presumably she was an immigrant, maybe even a first-generation immigrant, trying to make it, so of course you want to give your grandma, especially if she, changed her whole life up and left from where she's from and her culture and all that just to be here and to be giving you these opportunities. You don't want to let her down, right? So,
well, it's the same thing with my mom. My mom is an immigrant. I'm a first generation.
So would you give dudes ketamine and MDMA if you had to support your mom? I mean, allegedly.
Yes.
Okay, then. So,
without hesitation.
Danny, was there anything you like about the world in which this movie was set?
A lot. Like I said, it shows the struggle. It shows how club owners can be corrupt and not give where dues are due. It shows how they take cuts, and then it also shows...
Take advantage.
Oh, yeah. And then it also shows what, after the financial crisis happened, it shows what people had to do in order to survive.
Yeah, it does. And, you and I were basically teenagers or just before teenagers at the time that happened, and we can relate to it. We saw our parents go through that, and also the world in which this movie was set, just on a visual level. It's New York City. It's not just New York City, but it's Manhattan, which is the most glamorous part of New York City, and it's the New York City nightlife. So this was a very visually pleasing movie just to look at.
Yeah, I felt the lights, the music, everything.
Even if I had been fucked up on MDMA or ketamine, just watching this and couldn't really follow the dialogue, it would have been entertaining just to look at, for sure.
Oh yeah, they make sure they capture the nightlife.
Most definitely. Did you like the style in which this movie was made?
Yes,
it's nothing remarkable, but it was good.
It was good. It wasn't. I was thinking it would have been like a documentary type. To be completely
it kind of
honest.
almost was a documentary, but docudrama would probably be a good way to describe it.
Yeah, that would actually be it, because don't forget we're also having the crossover with a news reporter.
Yeah,
because
it's a real story, and they're trying to show how this story came to life because it's a big part of it. So, is this a movie that I could watch with my family?
No.
Most definitely not. Unless your family owns a strip club or a porn store, this is not the kind of movie that you want to watch with your family.
It isn't. Now, as if it's depending on your father, maybe.
Maybe, but you're not going to want to watch it with your mama.
No.
Most definitely not. Again, unless your mom was a stripper and she's got some kind of insight based on it. Although, as I've learned listening to some other podcasts, such as How to Do Drugs, shout out to you guys, a lot of people that are strippers or were strippers in their past don't necessarily want to tell their teenagers about that life at least not until they become adults. So, unless your mom's an aged stripper, no, this is just This is not a movie you want to watch with your family at all.
There's maybe a few exceptions, but overall,
you're definitely an exception, especially if your family's any kind of conservatives. So, this question isn't quite as relevant to that because, I need a moral. When I watch a story with my family, I really want a story that has a good moral to it, because part of the most fun that I have watching a movie with my family, with my mom and my dad or my siblings or whatever, is discussing the moral of the story, discussing the point of the story, discussing something real about life that we can get from that. Is there a moral to this story, Danny?
I think one of the characters says it best in the movie: hurt people, hurt people.
Yeah, and that's actually, I did not think about that till just now, but that's actually a pretty good moral of the story. And you could say the moral of this story is the same as the moral of Slumdog Millionaire. This is not an Oscar winner like that was, but the moral is the same, which is desperate people are going to do what they have to survive.
Yeah, desperate people, desperate times, desperate measures.
So, did this movie give you context within the first 5 minutes?
Definitely.
Most definitely. Like, I knew where we were, what was going on. This is not the kind of movie I had to sit down and figure out. It's very, very straightforward.
No, it wasn't like, let's play 20 questions before the 20-minute mark type of thing.
Was it believable? I mean, again, this is a true story, so it's almost a moot point. Yeah, it was definitely believable, and the way they portrayed it was believable. I would say for the most part, I really believed all of the actors or the actresses in this movie. Did it have an ending, or did it just quit?
It had an ending.
Had a good ending, right? Like, I mean, it was the real ending of this real story.
Yeah.
Again, this is not as applicable to, again, a true story, but is it believable? Did you believe the actresses in this movie?
Oh, yeah. They did a really good job.
I think so, too. I think they did a great job. Was there any good twists in this movie?
Oh, several. I think we covered at least 3 of it. We covered her starting and then quitting for the baby, coming back, and then it turns into a hustle, and then they also turn again with the pretty much outreach type.
Oh yeah, because they don't. This becomes so successful that they're not. Again, this is not the podcast where we give any spoilers.
Yeah,
but we, this becomes such a successful hustle that they start recruiting girls to go out and do this. They build a company out of this hustle.
Oh yeah, they become essentially a business on their own.
And a slight spoiler alert: one of the weak links in that becomes a liability. We'll just say it at that. I want to keep it vague enough that we're not saying too much.
Liability. I would.
One of your new links becomes a liability in this hustle. Does this movie teach anything important about life? I don't think that was really the point of this movie, to try to teach something. It was just trying to tell a good story, a true story, really.
Yeah, it was trying to tell a true story. It wasn't trying to teach us really anything, I believe. If it was trying to teach us, it was like we explained: desperate measures, desperate times, desperate people.
One thing I can definitely get from this movie: you should be suspicious of anybody that seems like they like you a little bit too much. People are mostly only going to like you. Strangers, for the most part, are mostly only going to like you for what they can get from you. I think it teaches that when you relegate certain things, you've said earlier, this movie is a great example, and I completely agree with you, of why sex work should be legal. This movie definitely teaches, once you enter the world of vice, you become more of a target. You're definitely more, just like if you go to Eastern Europe, you shouldn't use your credit card because you might get it stolen. You go into the world of vice, you go into a seedy bar, and that leads you to a seedy strip club, and all strip clubs are seedy to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. You are asking to be taken advantage of. You need to understand what you are in that situation, just like Facebook. You're not the client. You're not the client. You're not even the customer. You're the fucking product.
Oh yeah.
You're the product, and when you have a bunch of the whole reason people go to strip clubs is so they can get the attention of hot girls. If you got 4 hot girls already giving you too much attention for free,
Question it.
Question it for sure, because you might end up paying for that shit in ways that you're not even expecting to. You might just, and like really, that's I guess the moral of this story. So, what's the theme of our season this season?
What the fuck did I just watch?
What the fuck did I just watch? And this was a great example of what the fuck did I just watch. It's a little bit mainstream, a little more so. You've probably already heard of this movie before we talked about it, but it was still good. This movie was good. This movie was great. You should definitely go and watch this movie. No spoilers. I hope we didn't give away too much of it for you. I don't think we did. You don't have to read the New York Magazine article ahead of time, but if you're one of those nerdy people that likes to do stuff like that, I don't think it will lessen your enjoyment of it any at all. The twists are not hardcore enough that it's like, oh my god, it's going to spoil it for you to know the real story. I actually, we did not read the article before we went into it. It's not like Zola where we read the tweets ahead of time. But this was a great movie. This is a really good movie. It was a great what the fuck did I just watch movie. And for y'all that have still hung with us to this point, please and thank you, go and give us a review on Apple Music or wherever you listen to podcasts, and tune in again for us next week where we talk about the movie Cam, which is very much in the same vein.
Oh, yeah, that one.
That's another crazy one with a little bit of Twilight Zone supernatural type of element that talks about the Vice world, another aspect of the Vice world. So tune in again next week to hear about Cam. Thank you guys for listening to us. You're listening to Amigas. Have a blessed night.
See you guys next week.